a cockpit cover from that German company Wunderlich, but I actually think it's made by V Parts. Well, that's what it says on the box, but I purchased mine through Nippy Normans. Again, I'll put all the information you need in the description down below. So what do we get in the box? Well, we get the cockpit cover, we get a plastic spanner, and then we get a little bag of screws, and then if you want to use it, we have a little sticker which actually sticks onto the cockpit cover itself. Oh, and not forgetting, you also get a set of instructions, which I think I'm going to do that with them. Just to let you know, folks, I actually installed this yesterday and then I've taken it back off the bike. So the bike is as you would come to fit it. So I've used all the language under the sun yesterday, a right royal pain in the backside. So if you stick around, and I will show you the best way and the easiest way without any frustration, well, not too much frustration, for you good folk to fit this Wunderlich cockpit cover. Before we go any further, I would suggest if you're wearing any watches, take your watches off. And if you've got any big rings, take the rings off or tape them up with band-aids or something, and just make sure you've got no sharp bits sticking out from yourselves, because when we come to take the USB connector out and refit it, you're going to be pretty close to the sides of the panels here, and if you spend a lot of money on your bike, you don't want to start putting scratches down. So first off then, we've got 4 T25 screws to remove from this section of the bike. So we've got one around the side here, 2, 3 and another one here, so that's 4 we need to remove. I suggest you just wind the windshield up, and that just makes the removing of this section of the front fairing a little bit easier. So let's do that now. A quick tip, folks, is draw a very rough sketch of the front of the bike with the holes numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you take the screws out, 1, 2, 3, 4, put the screw next to the relevant number, so you know screw number 1 has come out of hole number 1, just like this. So all we need to do is, if you put your thumbs here, this is quite flexible, push down here, and that moves the sides of the plastics around out away from the sides of the fairings, and then just slowly remove. And so all you're doing is that, so you're just flexing these bits. So what we've got to do now is just remove these 2 fairing screws. So there's one there, and then there's another one here. And all we're going to do by removing those is just allow us to just pull this fairing back a little bit, so we can ease the cockpit cover in much easier with less risk of damaging your expensive BMW. So the company who manufacture the cockpit cover do actually do a video, but it's all in German, and it's, well, I don't speak German, maybe some of you folk do, but you'll see in the video they put some tape along here, and you may wonder, well, what's that for? Basically, it's just to protect the fairing, the front side fairing bit here, from being scratched, because when you fit the cover in here, you have to move this out a little bit, and as it feeds in, you just want to make sure you're not going to scratch the side of the fairing here. So that's why they put tape on both sides, and that's why we take the screw out, just to make sure we have a little bit of play in the side here, so we're not going to damage the fairing part here. So that's the reason why. So we're going to put a little bit of tape here, and I would strongly suggest put some tape on the front here, and then under here as well, just under here, because as you feed the cockpit cover in, it's a bit of a faff, and you end up waggling around a bit, and you don't really want to cause any unnecessary scratching. Not to say it will. Right, so these are the bits we've taped up. So down here, again, because the cover's got a slide under here, so it just stops it being damaged. Under the side here, the TFT screen, the front of the keyless ignition section there, that's done. And let's go around to the other side. Again, the side of the fairing here has been done. And I've also done down here as well, because a bit later when we come to put the screw, the retaining screw, back onto the rear of the USB connector, you can't access much from here whatsoever. That's why I've said make sure you've got no clothing on which is going to scratch the bodywork. But again, I've just put some painter and decorators tape on here. What I'm going to do now is, with this plastic spanner that they supply, is under here, it really is a tight fit. There's a locking nut under the back of the USB here, and this is the new 2022 one. So on the internet site of the manufacturer that make this, they've got the old one, so it's not current. So when you come to refit it, it really is a right raw pain in the backside. So yeah, just put the spanner under here. It will go, and then you just undo the backing nut and then unscrew it. So I'm going to do that now. It's a bit hard to do it single-handed. So that's done now. I've loosened it. So I'm just gonna, I can actually get my finger in there and just undo it with a finger. So that's quite easy to do. So yeah, just loosen it, and then that comes off. And then what we have to do is just lift this up a little bit, and then try and, I don't know if you can see it in there, there's the power supply in there. Let's put my finger in there. There's a power supply. So I've just got to push, there's a little connecting tab in the bottom. So push that and then remove the plug. I'll show you what it's like when it's out. So I'm not sure if I can show you this here, folks, but that's the power supply for the USB socket. And what you need to press is this little tab right down at the bottom. Again, it's really hard to see. And then that will enable you just to slide it forward and off of the USB connector. As always, make sure you put the locking ring somewhere safe and the USB socket also somewhere safe and out of the way. If you actually wanted to, you could actually take the USB socket out before you've put the tape on, but yeah, whichever way you want to do it is it's no great shakes, as they say. So that's it now. My dogs are really cheesed off of me because they're just bored, stupid. Hopefully you folk aren't. So we've protected the bike now. So what we need to do is now offer up the cover to the front of the bike. So what we're going to do now is just prepare the cockpit cover for fitting. So with the supplied screws, just pop one screw in here and then flip it over, and then there's a black piece with a bit of a cutout. And this cutout, as you can see here, that actually rests against the inside of the side frame. So as you can see here, this is how it fits, and that's how it secures the cockpit cover to the frame of the motorbike. So back to the cockpit cover, then pop it on, and then you've got a nylon locking nut to put on. And then as you can also see, that black piece with a cutout, it's got a cutout in it for the nut to be secure in it, just like this one here, as you can see. So this is now, all the fittings are now on the cockpit cover, so we're just going to offer it up to the motorbike. So what I'm going to do is approach it from the front, but make the handlebars nice and centralized. So coming in from a vertical kind of way, so straight down, and then you get to a certain point. You may just have to move the brake and the clutch lines out the way. Bit of jiggery pokery, and eventually it's quite flexible. It will go down. So push it down to the horizontal, which is why we've got the tapes on the bike so we don't scratch anything. And then eventually it will fit. You can see on the right hand side it's fitted fine, and on the left hand side it's just gone under where it should be. So we're just going to zoom in a little bit with the arrow. That's where that piece should be. So I'm just faffing around a little bit, pulling it backwards and forwards, and then after a period of time it will pop up, and as you can see, pop up over, and that's the job done. Woohoo! So just go around, make sure it fits properly, and that's the reason why we had to take the front fairing bit off to get access to these mounting points. So, and you can also see why we've had to tape the side fairings as well so we don't scratch them. So this is the worst bit of the lot. This is the bit that caused me to F and Jeff yesterday. So take the USB power supply, feed it into the top here. Again, we haven't secured anything, so it's all loose, so you've got a little bit of movement. And we have to feed this ring. Again, there's a crown to it, so it will actually go, it will screw up that way, so the flat surface is uppermost. I've got diddy hands, you might have to get somebody to help you here, but I'm going to put my finger on through the ring, the nut, and then feed it up through here, and then feel for the underside of the USB. again waggling it around. So it's now on, and then if I can turn the USB power supply and the ring at the same time to try and get it to feed on, then that is half the battle done. But it's an absolute faff. It really is. Don't bother using the black plastic spanner that they supply with you. You won't have a catch chance in hell of getting that on. So it's just a little bit of patience. It's actually on there now, and you just got to be careful not to cross thread it, because it is only a plastic thread. That's going on now. There's only a plastic thread on the USB power supply, and obviously you're screwing a metal nut onto the plastic thread. So that's pretty tight now. So what we're going to do is, with a series of pushes and turns at the same time, is to push and then turn. So I'm just using the tip of my finger, push and turn, push and turn until my flipping fingertip hurts, to get that as tight as we can. You're not going to get that plastic spanner under there, and I don't know what else you can use, but if anybody's got a better idea, folks, please put it in the comment section down below. So pushing down on the plug on the USB and then twisting with my finger at the same time, so that ain't going to go anywhere. So what we need to do now is connect the power supply to the back of the power USB socket. So yesterday I had to use these pliers to actually get the plug back on the back of the USB, but today it just seems that I'm able to put my hand up here, shine the torch in there, and then it looks like I've been lucky today in that I can push the plug on, looking through the gap here. Am I going to hear a nice click? Yes, it's on. Okay, so you might need to use the pliers. I needed to use them yesterday, but today the gods have been looking down on me, and through here, putting the hand up, I was able to secure the plug to the back of the USB. So that is now, power is running to the USB, which is absolutely bloody brilliant. Now that I'm happy that the power supply is reconnected to the back of the USB, it's just to, with a Torx T25, is just screw these in. And so I found the best way to get the bottom screws attached to the frame rail here on the cockpit cover is just to come in from the underside and just make sure the nut is actually in the little cutout on the back of that L-shaped bit that we're talking about, and then put your thumb on the bottom of the nut, so it's not going to come out whilst you screw this Torx head in, and then secure it, and then that will mount it to the frame quite nicely and just nip it up nice and snug, which is what I've done there. And obviously just make sure that the holes align here, and then pretty much that's everything done, bar a final check with the USB connector. So let's put everything back and I'll just show you the end result and any other tips that I can come up with. Right, let's go. So that's all the 4 screws back in now. So everything's nice and snug. So I'm just going to tighten it all up now. Just nipping it up and a little bit for mum basically. And that is more or less a job well done. So all I've got to do now is just put those fairing screws in. And we are good to go. The fairing screws, there's no washer on the underside, so don't go too hard on them because you end up splitting the fairing. So yeah, just do them up snug, but not too snug. Otherwise you are going to start cracking stuff. So just a word of warning. And that's enough for me. Good shape. Yeah, that's all good. Same for the other side. Don't go too mad with it. You don't want to split your fairings on your new bike. And that is done. So I'm just going to go over the bottom screws on the cover just to make sure they're nice and tight. Now that everything's been fitted, and just a little bit, and that's snug. That is everything done. So thank God for that. It is a faff. It was more of a faff yesterday. So I'm just going to take the rest of the masking tape off, from the keyless ignition bit from the underside of the TFT. And I'm just going to leave the green tape on around here. I'm just going to go back in again and see if I can nip that locking nut up a little bit more. Now everything's secure, so yes, get my little hand in under here. So I'm just pushing on the USB socket from the top here, and I'm just going to tighten that up. So push and a turn with the old finger, and don't know if I hurt. So push and a turn. So again, it's a metal nut on a plastic thread. So that is pretty solid, so I'm happy with that. The plug's connected, so I can take the green masking tape off. We haven't damaged the bike. That can do one. I think folks will agree. That doesn't look too bad, does it? Yeah, it doesn't look too bad, not too shabby at all. But there is one problem, and we'll come to that next. I'm going to have some tea. See you in 5. All right, guys, well, I've been out on the bike now, and the cover's pretty good, actually. I'm really happy with that. So it looks really good. There's no vibration from it, so more than happy. The only thing is, when I went to put the USB in, it goes in, but it's obviously not fitting in far enough. So I've had to take the USB power socket out, and what I'm going to have to do is, if you can see this bit here, that's the weatherproof cap. I'm going to have to get a blade and just cut maybe the first section out so that the USB cable can go in, because what's happening is, because the way it's sat on the cover, you can't actually get the USB cable in there, because this is pushing up, but so it's not letting the cable go straight in, so it's causing a problem. So I'm going to take a little bit of a blade to this, and then we'll refit it, and hopefully that'll be the job done. So that's what I've done, folks, is with a very sharp blade, so that's a new blade in there, and carefully just trimmed the weatherproof cap there. So it still looks pretty fine, you're not going to see it anyway. So here it is on the bike with a trim waterproof cap, and we open the cap and then just insert your standard iPhone USB charger or whatever you're going to put in there. It was quite tight anyway originally without the trimming of the cap and without the Wunderlich cover on, but I'll try and do this single-handedly. Obviously you all know that the sign faces upwards to match the sign on the power socket, and then just insert it. If it is a tight fit, as I said, even without the cover on, and then just insert it. Does it work? Well, let's have a look. Let's power the bike up, and as you can see, it's now charging the phone. Removing the USB, again, it's going to be tight with that door here. What they should have done, or what I hope Wunderlich are going to do, is just make some kind of adapter ring just to raise this power socket further upwards, maybe about 3 or 4 millimeters, which will mean you won't have to cut the cap to allow easier access of the USB into the power socket. So single-handedly, this is going to be tight. Yeah, I'm going to just have to waggle it about a little bit. And there we go, it comes out. And pop the cap on. There we go, that's it. All nice and waterproof. Well, that's it, folks. We finally come to the end of the video. Yippee, I hear you all say. Final few words from myself. Well, would I recommend the cockpit cover from Wunderlich? I'm going to say, yeah, I would actually, although it is a little bit expensive for what is in effect a piece of plastic, but that plastic is well made and the fittings supplied are of a high quality. And in the 1 hour or so that I've been riding the bike, nothing's vibrated, and I'm more than happy with that. Obviously, over a series of rides, just revisit all the screws that you've undone previously to fit it, and then just make sure none of them have vibrated loose. I do hope in the future maybe Wunderlich will supply some kind of adapter ring if you've got the 90-degree USB power socket supplied by BMW, and that way you won't have to take a scalpel blade to the weatherproof cap like I had to do. So that's it, folks. Stay tuned for some other installation videos in the bits and pieces section that are going on to my new BMW R1250GS. As ever, ride safe, and see you again soon in the next video. Ta-ta for now. Bye.